always been a very keen observer on the air cargo market, and I've seen it grow, and I can see, as we're just talking about now, a huge ambition for it to grow, right? So with the right resources behind it, or with the right government initiatives, with the right investment from manufacturers, I can see the air cargo business in India being an absolute growth story and a great success story in the coming years.
Hello, I'm Zeenal Devia from Stat Media Group. I am at the ACFI Annual Conclave 2023, and with me is Mark Sutch, the Chief Commercial Officer of Cargo International, IndiGo. Hello, Mark.
Hello.
The government's ambition is to increase Indian airspace to 10 million metric tons by 2030 to 31. And the current one is 3.15 million metric tons. So how can Indian stakeholders help make this mission a reality?
Great. Well, for a start, it's always good to see big targets and Indian government go big, which is great. There's 2 points to this, I think, really. One is going to be around the whole Make in India and Indian manufacturers coming to the forefront and exports growing that way. Okay, so that's the aspect of actual having the cargo there to export. That's number one. I think probably a very important aspect of this, so from my point of view, is how Indian companies, so Indian airlines, of which IndiGo is obviously one of a number, how we can sort of contribute to this growth. The reality is that at the moment, about 90% of import and export air cargo in India is carried on foreign carriers or non-Indian carriers. That's driven by a lot of freighter capacity, a lot of wide-body capacity, with a few other factors. I think for us and for me at IndiGo, my job really now as International Cargo Chief Commercial Officer is to see how we can sort of tip that balance. We're at the beginning of our journey, but, if you look at the ambition of this airline I work for the last 16 years and what they've done on the passenger side and the growth they've seen there, then we're very, very keen to be part of that growth on the cargo side, and I can see it happening. At 10 million, it's a big ask. We'll certainly play our part to make sure that we can get as close to there as possible.
Amazing. That's interesting. How do you envision the Indian air cargo market to be in the next 5 years? What are your future ambitions for the Indian cargo sector? Or I would say even the international cargo sector, if you could just give us a little sense.
Sure. Well, look, in terms of India, I've been lucky enough to live in India for about 5 of the last 6 years, and I always enjoyed it. And I've always been a very keen observer on the air cargo market, and I've seen it grow. And I can see, as we're just talking about now, a huge ambition for it to grow, right? So with the right resources behind it, or with the right government initiatives, with the right investment from manufacturers, I can see the air cargo business in India being an absolute growth story and a great success story in the coming years. If I take my role in that, on the role of IndiGo for our international cargo, we're very much at the beginning of a journey. As you know, IndiGo started very much as a passenger airline. It still is a big domestic player with a growing ambition internationally. It's only 16 or 17 years old now, I believe. It's grown hugely. During COVID, like many other people and many other businesses, it was very clear the importance of air cargo, not only on business itself, but on individuals, the delivery of vaccines and all the work that was done around supply chains. We've seen an opportunity in COVID. We did many charters on our passenger aircraft with cargo only. The company is now invested in freighters, and this is a massive step. So we've gone from an all-passenger fleet to an airline now that has a huge passenger fleet with a couple of freighters, with another one coming later in the year. And with freighters, we've got great opportunity, particularly within the region, which is where we're operating at the moment and where we have the range to operate, to build that. Obviously, if you look at the rest of the sector, as I had said previously, a big majority of the air cargo into and out of India is carried on non-Indian carriers, driven mainly by wide-body. Air India have announced large orders of their going forward, so that's going to help fuel the growth of cargo here as well and tip the balance, I guess, more towards Indian carriers. But for me, look, I'm bullish about air cargo in general. I'm very, very bullish about India in many aspects, and air cargo being a key one that I'm involved in at the moment. And when it comes to IndiGo's ambitions, it's an airline that's always succeeded where it's tried. So we're going to try very hard, and we're at the beginning of the journey. So I hope you can watch it as we grow.
Amazing. That's great. Also, in one of the keynote sessions, we heard them talking about the trans-shipment hub. So India is primarily focusing on being a trans-shipment hub as well. So what are the difficulties that actually the country is, encountering right now? Could you just touch base on some of those points?
Well, let me go back to my previous role when I was at Cathay Pacific, an airline based in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is, I think, still the biggest trans-shipment hub for air cargo in the world. And if you look why that is, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's at the geography-wise, it's in a very good marketplace, right? We're the southern tip of world's biggest manufacturer in China. Secondly, the infrastructure that was put in. If you ever visit Hong Kong Airport, which I'm sure you probably have, you'll see that the cargo terminal and the smoothness of operation, from everything from customs to ground handling, is quite incredible. They've built another runway there, so they've got the capacity for slots. These are all elements that are needed for transshipment hubs. So let's take slots. it's very important that airports recognize the importance of air cargo, provide the right slots for freighters, which is often not the case. They're not prioritized in many airports. So that's number one. In terms of infrastructure, absolutely delightful to hear the conclave today from the government of India about their absolute ambition to get this done. Huge steps have been made, in terms of customs 24/7, customs clearances, digitization. These things are all in the right direction. And then there's facilities. There are a lot of new facilities being built, here in India. I talked to a lot of the airports about that, and it's getting to a point where it's absolutely world class. I think we're now not far away from all of these factors coming together and really seeing a reality in trans-shipment. It's being done at the moment on the passenger side with some of the couple of the key hubs. You can see it growing. I've certainly seen it grow in the last 5 years. There's absolutely no reason why it can't happen in cargo, and I'm really bullish about it. And I'm delighted that the government today seems to be putting it very much front of agenda when it comes to aviation.
Yeah, well, hopefully we should see that very soon in the Indian market.
I think you will. I'm sure you will.
Great. So in 2022, India's traffic performance was positive, with the whole market expanding by 8.4%. How will India do this year, and with capacity expanding and becoming better than it was before the pandemic?
Cargo is like any other business. It's all about supply and demand. From an economic point of view, supply and demand, how you balance it when you're running a business. If I take the business side out of it and I just look at growth and tonnage, I think India's going to do well. I was speaking not long ago at a perishable conference, on a panel about perishables, and it's amazing to see the kind of quality that India's producing now in terms of perishables. That's what we carry a lot of, particularly out of South India. As growing, there's a lot of domestic consumption, but also people are beginning to realize the quality of India now for perishable goods around the region and even further afield. So, that's just one small sector. You look at pharma, you look at automobile manufacturing here. There's so many areas that India is really, really expanding on that I think air cargo is going to be a key part of that in terms of the supply chain. So I'm very, very bullish about it. How you balance the supply and demand, that's where it's hard for airlines to try and make sure we remain profitable, and it's a good, cool part of our business. That's going to be difficult. The market is very cyclical depending on the capacity, and COVID was the absolute extreme. We're now recovering post-COVID. The capacity is coming back in, particularly on the passenger side. Modern passenger aircraft, particularly wide body, carry a lot of cargo. So we'll have to see how this pans out over the coming months. But generally speaking, in terms of air cargo, hugely positive about the Indian market. Going to be great, I think.
That's great. Right. So I will wrap up this interview with, can you share some of the highlights that you have taken from the ACFI Annual Conclave 2023?
Great. Well, we're halfway through the session so far. So in terms of the opening highlights, to me, it was to hear firsthand from the government, different departments of the government, their commitment to air cargo as an industry. And I mean, that's really something I think that's very positive. Aviation is always top of the agenda in India. Their desire to be the third biggest aviation market in the world is moving towards a reality, in my view. But, when you take this subset of air cargo within aviation, it's really a breath of fresh air to hear the government being so involved and understanding, I think, so many of the issues around it that need to come together for us to take it to the next level. So that's what my takeaway is so far, but we're only halfway through the day, so let's see how it goes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you.